You know, it's pretty bad when only a few episodes into a show, I can already tell it's gonna be a train wreck of epic proportions. At least I'm gonna lay out some observations that have led me to that conclusion. Even if it's early on in a show carrying over for 2 seasons, I can still remark on a shaky start. So between the plot pacing, sound design, and just odd choices in presentation, there's a lot holding this one back. Which is a damn shame, since I think there's some interesting ideas lurking in this show that just aren't shining through. So, let's answer the question. Is Fairy Gone good? Let's start off with some of the better aspects of this show. If there was one thing the writer cared about when crafting the narrative here, it was ensuring the world had a rich backstory and unique identity, which is honestly one of the places many fantasy stories fall flat on their faces. For instance, the number of civilizations with medieval-level technology and classic Tolkien-esque classes is innumerable, even among anime. A ton in recent memory, between just about every isekai and even Goblin Slayer planting their heels firmly in that camp. So then why do I find this series so intriguing with its setting? Well, because it chose to do something different. Rather than relying on wizards and knights, this series decided to base itself on a later period in history, around the mid to late 1800s with what appears to be steam engines and rifles. That's immediately going to make this series stand out compared to its contemporaries. It has the possibility to explore the interactions of the fantastical and modern with, say, magic-powered trains and the like. Though this series is less about magic. The only other anime that springs to mind for me that has a similar level of technology with fantasy elements is Fullmetal Alchemist, though I'm certain there are others. And the world building itself is strong, boasting a number of countries immediately identified, showing the remnants of a great war that destroyed a lot of these smaller places as they were merged into a larger kingdom. And the residuals of that war still linger strong in the show's current events. It's not just a backdrop either, it shapes the show's initiating incident. People who fought in that war are trying to move past it, people impacted by the events are seeking to right wrongs, and instruments made for it are a big concern. This series has all these pieces in play that makes for the groundwork of an enjoyable story. Personal stakes for the leads, with the opposite side of the central conflict as former friends becoming enemies, all while the main girl struggles to get a grip on her newfound powers. And the concept of fairies in this show is intriguing, as they're seemingly non-sentient, ethereal life forms that can't even be seen by humans under normal circumstances. As I mentioned, magic may not be prevalent in this series. The fantasy elements come in the form of fairy possession, granting the ability to summon an avatar to fight by your side that usually has some unique power. And somebody's been using JoJo as a cheat sheet. I actually don't mind the similarity to stands in this show, since it's a nice way to spice up combat besides throwing fireballs or different colored beams at the enemy. And since the power is derived from fairies, a sort of forest spirit, character powers relate either to animals or forces of nature, such as a wolf or fire spirit for our 2 leads. So I do like the groundwork this anime put forth to base itself upon. But I think the execution is where it slips up, specifically in how it tells the story it's trying to tell. Direction feels like a massive failing here, as though the person in charge just couldn't be asked to give a single shit. The sheer amount of flashbacks given between the 2 leads is mind-numbing. I don't mind establishing the characters, but awkwardly dumping massive amounts of history at the audience seemingly isolated from the rest of the story in that episode isn't a good vehicle for delivering that information. For instance, this bit on how Free got his fairy powers really adds nothing to his character besides mentioning that it's typically done through an operation. Some organ is implanted in them and that's how they commune with the fairies or something. That exact information is given a few seconds later in a much more natural sounding dialogue when discussing the main girl. And further on this, his backstory and hers are woven together, cutting between each other to show a parallel that's completely obvious, but just further confuses the timeline overall. They're trying to impart some narrative significance, but instead it comes off as scatterbrained. And that's not the only part that happens. The show seems hell-bent on giving each character equal time, so during the fight scenes we'll see Free fighting while the girl is fucking about or taking aim. Like this part in episode 2 loses all spatial awareness in the scene. Characters flat out go missing, and then there's this massive ass pull of this guy somehow killing all these people off screen. When the hell did he have the time? We watched him fight, he didn't disappear during. But I think what sold the low-effort narrative for me was this. It's so simple, but really shows how little care was put into this show. A simple cut to black that skips maybe a minute of screen time. And it's really just there to save some animation. Like, they forgot to draw the dude getting off his bike and going up to the truck or something. The action's just hard to follow, even when it shows what's happening, but that might be forgivable if the sound design wasn't complete trash. Now, I briefly touched on this in my season preview where I asked why heavy rock with vocals is playing under a character's dialogue, and I still want to know the answer to that because the problem isn't going away. This isn't a complaint about the music choices or anything, but specifically how they're using their songs. These heavy tracks would work fine for the fight scenes, and they even use them for some. But I cannot fathom why you would want to distract from character interactions that are meant to be important to the story as a whole. Like when meeting up with long-lost friends or former allies now on the opposite side of a conflict. And I know these all sound like nitpicks, but let me ask. Is a story the series is trying to muddle with its confusing juxtaposition, unfocused cuts, inconsistent character actions, and tries to bury under music, a story worth being told? It at least shows that the production staff weren't that confident in it, to say the least. So, is Fairy Gone good? I don't think it is right now, nor will it improve much based on how the show started. These are leadership issues, series construction problems, and I'm finding the anime a confusing mess, which is a damn shame because I think there's some good ideas buried here. But unfortunately, you'll have to dig through some odd choices and horrible direction to find them. But who knows? Maybe you'll get some enjoyment where I couldn't. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and do all the other YouTube stuff because that really helps me out. Thanks for watching.